Hello, greetings, 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 greetings. Okay, we're on. Is that too loud?
Yes.
No.
Whoops.
I can turn it
Tone
down
down
a
the
little bit.
laughter.
Something by Hendrix.
Sorry?
Do something by Hendrix.
By Hendrix? Who's that?
Jimmy.
Yeah, I know. Just kidding. So the topic that I chose to speak on today is, what does Jesus really mean to me? And it's one that has intrigued Anne for some time. And I wanted to let you know that I first gave this presentation in 1988. My husband had just been transferred from a base where he was base commander. And I had become the organist in this little Anglican church out in the country in northern Alberta near Beaver Lodge. It's kind of Dawson Creek and west. And so I spent a lot of time in this little church, and I was not religious at the time or searching for anything spiritually, but the reverend that was in charge of that church asked me to play the organ in the church, and he was also the padre on our base, so he came up to the base every week, and I entertained him, and we talked about spiritual kinds of things. So in 1988, we'd already been transferred to Ontario, and suddenly I received a letter from Reverend Butcher, and he asked me to speak at the base closing ceremonies that were happening later on that summer. And he asked me to speak on, what does Jesus really mean to you? I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue what, I was a party girl at CFS Beaver Lodge. I was a base commander's wife. I had to attend all the functions, and I had not ever envisioned myself standing behind a pulpit. So all that summer, I researched what Jesus, what had been written about Jesus in the Trenton, Ontario Library. And I wrote up this speech about what I had discovered. And what I discovered was that Jesus was not about religion, that he was a wayshower. He came here to teach us how to live, and so on and so forth. He did miracles, he did hands-on healing. So I was a little nervous about what Reverend Butcher was going to say about this speech, but I thought, I have to go with what I've learned. And so I did. I got up behind that pulpit, and there was like 500 people there, and lots of military types that had spent time at CFS Beaver Lodge, children and young people. And I got up there and I presented this speech, and I said afterward that Jesus didn't change a word of my script, and he was standing right beside me as I gave this presentation. And Reverend Butcher thankfully said, "Agnes, that was wonderful." My former name was Agnes Taves Andrews, and I still often use that name as my writing name. But after an experience of being an important Elizabeth, at some point in time I changed my name to Elizabeth. Getting back to Jesus, this was kind of the first experience with him in a long, long time. There's a picture hanging in my bedroom window when I was a child of Jesus, and it was Jesus very much like this picture that I brought today, and holding the lamb. And apparently when I was young, I was a very precocious child. I was always wanting to know things, and the Mennonite people weren't all that inclusive as to explaining what things were. You just had to take things literally. But Mother would always say, that is Jesus, and he is here for the little children. And whenever I heard about Jesus in Sunday school way back then, I remember at 4 years old, I would see Jesus light up whenever he was spoken of. And so 1987, so regressing just a little bit, I took the Reiki classes and began to do Reiki, opened up a Reiki center in Belleville, Ontario. Somebody here is originally from that area. And it just flew. I was doing a lot of Reiki and hands-on healing, and suddenly Jesus was appearing whenever I did hands-on healing. So I talked to my mother about it one time, and I said, because she wasn't too okay with me doing Reiki. It just wasn't kind of kosher according to the Mennonites, and I think they just had not heard about it. So so they were not familiar with what I was actually doing. But I discussed this with my mother, that Jesus was appearing, and she got it. She said, you know, he's a hands-on healer, so it tells me that, you know, you are doing something that's very positive. So jumping from 88 to 1989, in 1989, I met my twin flame in Belleville, Ontario, and all hell broke loose. I'd like to also say that all heaven broke loose. I don't know if anyone here has met their twin flame, but we were once the same soul. We were disconnected in Atlantean times, a long, long time ago. And when you meet your twin flame, it's like you become one. And it's amazingly loving and very high vibrational. So when I say all hell broke loose, it was also, we seemed to have a lot of karma between us. And it was like a love kind of hate relationship. And that's the reason that I eventually moved to Ontario, is to be with my twin flame. Unfortunately, it never did, was not successful that we were able to unite. And I felt that together we were very powerful and could do some really amazing work together. I've continued to do the work on my own as a light worker. But this experience was, and that year of 1989 was, it catapulted me into higher dimensions and constantly feeling I was in ecstasy. It was wonderful and it was crazy at the same time. But it was a Good Friday in that year, in 1989, that my family had already packed up and left to go to the cottage. And I was still at home in Trenton and doing some baking and preparing for the Easter weekend, when suddenly I was overcome by a spirit. My whole body was kind of went into a quake, and I thought something unusual was happening. So I laid down on my bed and closed my eyes and went into a meditative state, and suddenly Jesus was standing beside me. This was a Good Friday morning. I know. And then he took his hand and he placed it on my crown chakra, and my body split in half. And there was a huge golden column of light that flowed through my entire center part of my body. I think it was an expanded Kundalini experience where the Christ consciousness was opened up within my energy field. This lasted for maybe 5-10 minutes. And during that time, I could see things. I became visionary. And Jesus gave me words of power that I could dispel possessions, help people with possessions. So after that experience, I realized that what Jesus meant to me was that he was an amazing, amazing avatar. He was a higher dimensional being. With the Reiki experiences, of course, I'd already determined that he was also a Reiki master. I always said that Jesus was the original Reiki master. And he probably wasn't, but he certainly was doing hands-on healing at his time 2,000 years ago. In 1993, my former husband was posted to Israel, and I thought, whoa, Israel, Jesus' stomping ground. I will have lots more Jesus experiences here, but I did not, which was very interesting. The only time that I had a powerful experience with him was when I was at the Kinneret, which is the Sea of Galilee. Has anybody been there? John's shaking his head, and Alumna, yeah. I loved it there. I always spent time there when I was passing through to the Galilee, the northern Galilee. And I was meditating at the side of the sea once, and I had a vision, like it's recorded in the Holy Bible, about Jesus walking on the water towards his disciples. And I saw a boat with, people in it, and I was not in that boat, but I was one of them. I was sitting on the shore waiting for my group to come back into shore. As I continued to facilitate Reiki in the Middle East, in Israel, I eventually moved to Jerusalem. lots of my Reiki students who were Jewish started seeing Jesus, which I thought was really cool. One of my students reported seeing him standing beside us as I was facilitating hands-on healing with a tefillum on his forehead. The tefillum is a device that enhances one's psychic abilities and helps one to, a lot of the Orthodox Jewish people will place this upon their forehead when they're reading the Torah, when they're reading the Holy Scriptures. So it helps them to enhance their vision of what they're, an understanding of what they're reading. Another student reported him looking very Western with light-colored skin and piercing blue eyes, which I thought was really interesting. And I've come to determine from a lot of these experiences that Jesus will appear to us the way we need to see him. I obviously was really connected with that old painting of Jesus that hung in my bedroom when I was 4 years old. So that's how he always has appeared to me. So after Israel, I moved back to Canada and I created a retreat center in not northern BC, but north of Kamloops, BC, in the Halston Canyon. It's on the way to 100 Mile House. And it was just off the UFO trench up the North Thompson Valley, where I had tons of experiences with ETs and saw lots of UFOs and so on. And my husband could explain how they were powered, which was really interesting. He was a fighter pilot in the Canadian Forces. Not too many Jesus experiences there, but when I left there to move to Ontario, I decided that I needed to write a book about all my experiences and the paranormal and metaphysical to that point in time. So it was about 10 years of experiences. I brought some copies of the books. They're over on the table over there. And I wrote that book in 2003. I had fallen at work and had a concussion and had 3 months off, so I wrote a book. And it was actually prompted by watching one of Oprah's shows when she had been in South Africa gifting children for, I think she was there for several months. And I just started crying and I thought, what can I do to help planet Earth? And so, you know, that the brain said, you know, you can write a book. You have had so many experiences. Write a book and tell people about this. So I did. So in 2004, I was on a major book tour a year. One of my first radio programs was a call-in radio show, and again in Belleville, Ontario. And that whole area of the Great Lakes is a portal, by the way, as well, where galactics can easily come and go. And the radio journalist, he gave out my information, my website and my phone number, and I was very willing to talk to anybody that wanted to talk about any of the experiences that I had or share experiences that they might have had. And it was a couple of hours after I got home, then I got a phone call, and this person said, he said, I'm highly psychic, and while you were talking on the radio, I saw that you were one of Jesus' disciples. And I said, holy cow, that's pretty cool. I did have that experience in Israel, but it hadn't really dawned on me to research that. And I'd seen lots of my important past lives by that time, so but I hadn't seen this one, but I always felt really connected to Jesus. So when I hung up the phone, I intuited that I had been Bartholomew. I had indeed been one of Jesus' disciples. And that made a lot of sense to me because I knew that Jesus was always my spiritual teacher, and that I followed his teachings throughout my life, even though I was not spiritual per se. But it just resonated with me. And I'm going to research Bartholomew a little bit in the Holy Bible, and if we can believe what it says in the Bible, he was a little bit contradictory to Peter and some of the other disciples that were really gung-ho to create a religion around Jesus. And Bartholomew was kind of cool and said, no, look, you know, we just need to spread the word. You know, we just need to live the life the way Jesus did. So that experience helped me to understand that Jesus was a way shower, again, of how we should live. 2004. In 2011, I decided to go to a conference that was called 11-11-11, and it was a Crystal Skulls conference. Were you there? No. It was the Crystal Skulls conference in Los Angeles, and 12 of the original ancient crystal skulls were going to be there with their owners. So I was very attracted to go to this event. And I really enjoyed hanging out with all these amazing skulls, and I had some private sessions with them, and always felt a lot of light, and there was information about ancient times, Atlantean times, Lemurian times that came forth. But what really attracted me at this conference was a very small orb. It was about that big. It was a crystal clear orb, highly unusual. It was not from this planet. I need to take a break here, just have a little sip of water.
Like a solid one or metaphysical?
It was solid. Yeah, it was a solid. Yeah, a crystal clear orb. And we discovered that this orb had been found in an underwater pyramid near Bimini in the Bahamas in the 1960s sometime. And I can't remember the name of the person who now carries it and does workshops with it, but it was there at the conference, and I kept being attracted to this orb, and I felt that I had been with that orb before. As soon as I got near that orb, I immediately saw Isis and Horus and Thoth and Set. And I could see, when I was in the presence of that orb, that Jesus was also Horus of ancient Egypt. He was I think the firstborn son of Isis and Osiris. So that was exciting to make that connection. And I had a private session with this orb, which again catapulted me into a higher dimension. And as soon as the owner placed the orb on top of my crown chakra, or my head, Jesus was standing beside me on one side of me, and on the other side was Mother Mary, was his mother in that life. I had had an appearance of Mother Mary in Israel, in Nahariya, where I lived the first year. I lived there a stone's throw away from an ancient temple to Aphrodite, so the power and the energy was still very close to my apartment on the Mediterranean. So at that time, this was now 2012, at that time they asked me if I would like to be initiated into the higher dimensions, and I said yes.
Ask you, the vision, the folks in the vision, the orb?
Mary, yeah,
Mary,
yeah, when I had a
Jesus.
private
Okay.
session, yes, and the owner of the orb placed it on my crown chakra.
Right.
Jesus appeared in Mother Mary, and then they asked me,
Those-
Jesus and Mother Mary asked me if I would like to be initiated into the higher dimensions.
What do you mean by the owner of the orb?
The person who's carrying now,
Who's carrying?
he has the orb.
Hmm.
Yeah, the person who has the orb now and is doing workshops with the orb,
Oh,
this special crystal.
oh.
Yeah.
But it's not material.
It is, yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah,
Material.
it's a physical crystal of
Like a
some
crystal
sort.
ball.
Yeah, yeah, little crystal ball. Very, very powerful. So during this session with the orb, it was a very beautiful time especially with Jesus. He had his hand over here, and Mother Mary had her hand on my heart, and I could feel vibrations and changes going on in my energy field. And I always say that I've never been the same since, and that was at Mount Shasta in 2012. That was a powerful year for many of us light workers. A lot of us expanded our awareness and consciousness to a greater extent during that year. And after this session, Jesus handed me a scepter, and he put a golden crown on my head, and he said, "You are my beloved daughter, in whom I am well pleased." And I thought, whoa. now I'm his daughter, which at first I didn't understand, but when I meditated on it, I realized that it meant I was following in his footsteps, and that I was also becoming a way shower, and that I had come forth in this lifetime to express what I know and be a light here on the world. So that to me meant that he was a higher vibrational avatar who could facilitate these kinds of situations. So I encourage you to invite Jesus into your meditation space to facilitate whatever you need. I also feel that Jesus was a friend to me, and he's been a friend to many others. He's not ever appeared to me physically, but I'm clairaudient, clairvoyant, and clairsentient, so I see things and know things. And but one of my acquaintances, Mary Sparrow Dancer, has anybody heard of her or read her book called The Love Song? She writes about that in that book about a physical Jesus who appears to her many times. She's a total non-believer and can't believe, is totally can't believe it towards the end when she finally realizes that this being that is appearing to her quite often is actually Jesus. He appears to her in many different guises. As a native Indian was one of them, and appeared in a grocery store. When she left her husband and started writing and being a light worker, she was very poor. She lives in Florida. Tallahassee, I think, is that a place in Florida?
Yeah.
Tallahassee, thank you. So she writes about her physical experiences with him, and he also takes her on journeys out of body, which I haven't had, but which sound very real and are amazing. So if you can get a hold of that book, I highly recommend reading it. I've written some of my Jesus stories in a book called Garbage and Flowers, My Year's Sojourn in the Holy Land, and it's a travelogue of 440 pages of my travels in a journal form. And so what does Jesus really mean to me? He's a way shower, a friend, an amazing example of how to live. And I encourage everyone to, as I said before, to invite him in to be present whenever you need help with any situation. I understand that he was there at 9/11 and he was helping people cross over. And Mary Sparrow Dancer actually writes about that in her book, and that he appeared to her the day of, and that evening, and he was covered in dust and so on and so forth, and he'd been there facilitating. So I've come to realize that he is the bestowal Son of Earth, and that he comes to rescue humanity when we're really off on the wrong path. And I also, by the way, saw him in a past life experience with a friend. There was a time in my life in the 90s where I decided I wanted to see my past lives, and suddenly whenever a letter would come or somebody would phone or a client or a student would come, I'd immediately get this sensation through my body, and I would go sit in my meditation chair and I would see my connection with this person and see our past lives together. So for some of my close friends, I did little sessions where I helped them to see. And one of my friends excuse me, is an amazing jeweler. He crafts beautiful jewelry pieces in this lifetime for very high-end clients, $50,000 to $200,000 gold and diamond pieces. He's an amazing artist, and I saw him on Noah's Ark, which was a fascinating experience. I was seeing this art, and there was all this sudsy, watery vision around me, and I could see into the ark, and there were 4 people that I could see in Noah's Ark, and one was Shem, who was my friend, who went on to build a fabulous temple in Damascus in that lifetime. The two other people I didn't recognize, but there was also one woman on board who I did not recognize, but I saw that Noah was also, guess who? Jesus, yeah. So interesting that in those times, I think that's about 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, that flood, and Jesus was. So he's incarnated on this planet, and as I briefly mentioned before, he is the bestowal son of this planet, and he comes here to rescue humanity when we need help. I also know that he's an ascended master. I saw him at Mount Shasta inside the mountain in a vision, and he was standing behind a pulpit with lots of ascended masters meeting there, and he was the teacher of teachers. Yeah, so.
Cool.
I think that covers most of my Jesus stories, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, how do you see, when you hear stories about the return of Jesus, how do you see that manifesting, or what's your concept or impression?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I recently had an experience of, I was questioning my own ascension, and Jesus came to me, and I know that there will be an ascension coming up. He said it's soon, but soon in our reality is within the next 20 years is what I put it, and that there will be 144,000 souls that can leave the planet when at that time. So there needs to be that many souls ready to do the ascension, which is a transcendence from the physical, where we don't go through the fourth dimension or the astral dimension at all. We go right into the fifth dimension or higher. So it's like you totally need to have released all your karma on planet Earth to prepare for ascension. That's essential. Otherwise, you have to come back again. So do it now.
Question.
Yeah.
What do you come back to if there's no more Earth? Nothing to inhabit. I mean, if you say 144,000 are going to ascend,
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's a whole bunch that aren't going to. And
Mm-hmm.
the mechanics of it kind of doesn't work for me.
Are a little tricky?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, we hope that the planet is going to be raised in vibration as well, right? There are many prophecies that the planet is going forward to 1,000 years of peace when we get through the tribulations and the challenges. And there is a stone in a place called Tintagel in northern BC. It's put into a cairn. The stone is about that big, and it's placed into a cairn, which is right on the side of the highway. It's kind of halfway between Prince George and Prince Rupert. When I reached that cairn, I had to kneel down in front of it. There was a powerful message in that stone. That stone comes from Tintagel, England. And the message was that 2060 something, the planet tribulations, chaos will be over. So, getting back to your question.
Well, I used to totally believe, because I was very much a fundamentalist for much of my life.
Right.
And I used to totally believe that, Jesus is going to come and rejuvenate the earth, and we're going to have 1,000 years of peace and all that.
Uh-huh.
But the problem is just with my rational mind,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that anymore. I don't see that happening. That's with my rational mind, with what I experience today, and I tend to think it's an escape from a certain reality that we have to deal with, which is saying that Jesus is going to fix it.
No. I'm not saying Jesus is going to fix it.
No.
He comes here to warn us, perhaps, or to show the way. Like get with it, people, you know, you have to love your neighbor. And I know that there's been lots of ascensions before, and Jesus is just, because he is the savior of this planet. There's been lots of highly evolved beings that, you know, I've seen Buddha, I've seen other avatars, but Jesus he's kind of responsible for this planet. So he's going to provide this ascension, but whether or not he will again then manifest himself on earth and kind of lead the way, you know, I think it remains to be seen.
Interesting.
Meditate on it.
All the time.
It's really, I want to say it's really interesting talking about this as being a linear process, because there are so many ascensions happening all the time. They're like waves. And when we catch those waves, it feels to me like, in my experience, I've gone into a parallel dimension where I'm one step higher.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's an interesting thing when you have to add the multidimensional reality, parallel universes to that. It starts making more sense.
Uh-huh.
But there are always waves of ascension. And it certainly, if we all meditated, it would be more than 144,000. It could be like, there's always that potential that it could be a large mass exodus of awakening.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like we're leaving anywhere necessarily. Maybe we shift from our physical template, shift to a higher dimension of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
fourth density, or whatever you want to call it.
Right, right.
But it's interesting talking about it linearly, because people would imagine that we go to somewhere else.
Which we will do, some of
Yes.
us, yes.
And it's certainly hard to imagine what that would be in a linear mind.
I was asked to, can you just wait 1 second?
Second is over.
Second's over. I just wanted to say that I think it was 1988 or 1990 something, my guides asked me to come home. And at that moment I was so joyful. And I had discovered that my real home's in the Pleiades. And you know, we're all ETs. We're not from the Earth. We've all come here from other places in the galaxy. So going home is exciting for me, you know, and maybe I'll come back to planet Earth, you know, who knows? But I do want to go home, and that's in the Pleiades star system.
I guess
So,
what I was
go
going to
ahead.
say was, isn't it kind of like small thinking to think of past lives as being other humans before? When you've got, as Dan pointed out there, you know, parallel universes, and we could have been some sort of space creatures, or we could have been a star or something, or, you know, a planet, or a, you know,
You are a star.
you know, some sort of unimaginable things that our minds can't even conceive of. So to say, okay, look, we're going to march off 144,000 of us, and you know what, like, that seems awful small to me. Like, I mean, this whole thing is so infinite. To put any sort of numbers on things is like, why would you only be 144,000? Why wouldn't it be? I mean, and then you look at every creature on Earth. There's a bazillion, 100 trillion insects and bugs and birds, and all of it's moving around. All of it's got soul. So you know,
All of it has an energy, a consciousness. Not
I believe
all of it has.
It's all soul, and then to try to funnel it down to just these humans are the only thing, and that they recycle themselves around and around and around seems awful limited thinking to me. But then I'm going to vote for Trump. So.
You are not. Yes.
Oh, fun. What's he going to do?
I think it's possible that, you know, when they say 144,000 will ascend or be allowed into heaven.
It's not an allowing. You have to raise your consciousness.
Yeah.
We have to raise our consciousness. That's what it's all about. If you want to ascend to a higher dimension and not have to incarnate on this planet.
Say if they're short, they only got 143,000, could some of us.
Listen, I'm not God. I'm not God. This is what Jesus recently mentioned to me in a meditation just like 3 weeks ago. And I was having a discussion with Joseph Mark Cohen, who gave me a book to read about Jesus. And in this book, they're trying to determine, with all kinds of experiences, that Jesus never died on the cross. And, that's another one that I've contemplated on many times. But, whether or not he did, he certainly showed us ascension. Yes.
I want to thank you for sharing your relationship. I think it's courageous to speak about, what goes on with you in a relationship that you can't prove. And my question I have is, in your experience and understanding of that relationship, would it be correct to say that Jesus is available to all of us always?
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And in fact, maybe a part of who we are, each of us?
Jesus
Or
is a
or we-
bestowal son, and it's my understanding from my guides that when you are a bestowal son of a planet, kind of responsible for it, that you do not leave progeny when you incarnate in this dimension. So is that what you meant?
Yeah, I don't understand some of the language you use.
Okay,
I'm just trying to
okay.
get a better understanding for me about, like, my understanding and how does that jive with what you're saying. It appears you've spent a lot of time meditating and thinking on this and that, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Thank you.
and the idea of that it's not exclusive to you is really important to me.
Yeah, yeah.
That
For sure.
relationship is available to everyone
It's
all the time
available.
at the same time.
It's available to everyone.
And I also
Yeah,
get a little bit,
absolutely.
I get a little bit, like, have I done something, I need to do something different when I hear about, crystal things or places or people that somehow help that process of connection,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that somehow that's important and I've missed doing those things or being those places or being near those things. That,
What have you been doing?
Well, to me,
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
but to me, it's in, that's possible. That potential is everywhere. In every
Absolutely,
flower,
absolutely.
in every bird,
Yeah.
in every fish.
Yeah, I just, when 1987, I decided to be a light worker, and things just started happening. Things became available that I saw as opportunities to expand my consciousness.
Yeah.
Why is Jesus praised to be the Son of God? Aren't we all children of
We
God?
are
What does
all
it mean?
children of
Okay,
God.
what does it mean by it?
The Holy Bible has been rewritten, I don't know how many times, but many, many times. So we are all star sparks. We're all sparks of the big spark. We all have that connection. And we can connect through it by connecting to our higher self, which is the 12th dimension.
12th dimension.
Mm-hmm.
How can you be sure, I studied the Bible for like 40 years and I read it every year.
How many years?
About 40.
40 years. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and gradually over a period of time, I started to realize that, the words that are put in his mouth weren't his words, a lot of them.
You're talking about Jesus?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to come to a place where you have to sort it, And you've had your sorting procedure, and you've had your experiences. I've had mine, but it certainly is a different God and a different Jesus than is written in what you call the Holy Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, most people won't even choose to do that because it takes quite a bit to go through that, right?
Well, when that padre asked me to speak about what Jesus really means to me in 1988, this light bulb went on in my head and said, I didn't want to do it. I burnt that letter. I thought, whoa, I'm not doing this. But that light went on in my head and said, do something about this. And I highly encourage everyone, when you feel something strongly, pursue it, because we're all on our unique spiritual journeys. And, whatever pushes your buttons is something that I think we should check out.
I suspect if any of us was asked to describe that relationship we had with a higher power, Jesus, whoever. That, and we started to share that, we might sound a little woo-woo or something that you couldn't explain. It would be our own thing, you know.
Yeah.
That our, you know, circumstances and situations where we felt helped.
An open mind helps. Take a bite of an apple to see how it tastes.
I've had a sort of a vision, I guess, in London, England, and I understand now why, because I died there at past life in the burning of London, was confirmed. And I was told by a psychic before I went there that I would have visions. And I did, and I'm wondering if you can explain this to me, because I was trying to fall asleep and I saw Jesus and Peter next to each other, which I thought was Jesus, and I guess so, I mean, maybe that's possible. And then, for some strange reason, my body turned 3 colors. And I can't remember, damn it, what it was.
What colors they were.
And I've been ever since been looking for colors, 3 colors. I think it was blonde. Well, doesn't have anything to do with that though, I don't think. Blonde and the bodies of, and now that I'm doing Qigong, they keep talking about 3 colors in the one exercise, but I'm sure it's different colors than what I saw there. And you couldn't kind of visualize anything like that, or what it's about.
I'm not sure what you're experiencing. We all have soul colors. I see people's soul colors often when I'm doing energy work, and we've incarnated with one major color, and that color resonates with us to keep us on track. We all came here, we decided what we're going to do before we incarnated. We made a plan for ourselves, and then we got a push. Okay, now jump out through the dimensions and get down there and do it, kind of thing. So these, you know, I've been off track of my spiritual purpose. I was for many years, and I was in a vision at age 14. I knew that I was also coming here to be a rescuer of humanity, and that transferred into becoming a missionary, which I did not want to be. So I did not acknowledge that vision that I had of being a rescuer of humanity, or an activator of humanity.
So we all have one color.
We all have a main color, and
okay, so why do I have 3 colors?
Well, maybe these are colors that were important for your soul to experience while you were going through this mystical experience. It probably held you into your body at the time. To stay in your body at the time, yeah. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Blanket.
So after my experience of going to heaven and coming back, I had this really difficult time being on the planet for about 6 to 8 months afterwards, because I couldn't sort of describe what my experience was, because it was not with words that I could describe. It was more feelings. And then I so wanted to embrace the love of God in my everyday life and be that in which I experienced. Yet, when I came to the planet, I'm looking at, there's this religion, and there's this religion, and there's this way of doing it, and you have to follow the rules, and it's in a box, and I'm like trying to fit in a box, and I can't fit in a box, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to be a sinner, and I gotta be good, I want to be loving, and all these things, right? And then I just let go of all of that, because I'm like, I don't fit in one of these little boxes that, you know, but the thing that made me so upset was like, it was like, okay, these people don't get it. And what is it that you have to get? It's very simple. It's just about love. You don't have to fit in a sinner, no sinner box. Read the Bible, don't read the Bible box. Not at all. You just, if you want to have a relationship with Jesus, you just say yes. And that's it. It's so simple. And he's there with you all the time. And you have access to him all the time. And you don't have to go hold a orb or anything. And that was a great experience, but you don't have to do such a bad experience with my heart that I remember laying flat at home. I told my husband, please come home. I'm not feeling good. I'm exhausted. If I don't do something right, I'm going to have a heart attack. And so I just decided I would lay flat for a week. And I had this experience where these negative energies were trying to like get at me and get in me. And I was like, I don't want this. This is nuts, right? Why is my body so weak? How come I'm not strong physically, right? And then I said, that's it. I want Jesus to live inside of my heart all the time. And it changed everything for me right there. And so when I forget, when I'm having a bad day or something, you know, I forget, oh yeah, I have that connection. All I gotta do is ask. You don't have to read the Bible. You don't have to fit in a box. You don't have to be a sinner or not a sinner or whatever they're gonna tell you, right? You just have to be loving. It's just 4 letters. And it's really
Amen,
really
hallelujah.
yeah, it's easy.
So I guess that's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
we're Unitarians, eh? Is that what it's about?
Sorry?
That's why we are Unitarians now, not Unitarian.
I heard that on the way in, that there's been a switch of gears here.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thank you all for your amazing questions, and I encourage you to keep searching what you need to search for to find peace and love in your heart, and to raise your consciousness. Thank you.